Well, that was a shit Grand Prix if I've ever seen one. Of course, all it takes is one compliment from my side about how great and action-packed the racing has been this year, and the very next race we're faced with this bullshit. A grand total of 2 overtakes until lap 25, and a 25-second lead in the front. At least now it's Lando out front and Max catching up. Means that championship hopes are still kind of alive, and the McLaren dominance spree is still too young for me to despise the two Commonwealth chaps. So, could be worse, I guess.
No way! I actually shit myself.
The only reason this turned out to be a pretty shit race from the beginning was because there was no Sargeant on the grid. No matter what anybody says, the kid was here for a damn good reason, and we all felt it in Singapore. He brought the spice to the sport that no one else could. Well, so does Horner, I guess, if you know what I mean. Nevertheless, you can't help but respect the new Colapinto kid. That turn 1 dive bomb really reminds you of a certain someone, don't it?
And down the inside goes Daniel Ricciardo!
In fact, the race was so boring that the main scoop of the weekend has been the spurring rumours that our beloved Danny Ric is down and out, potentially not even living to see the lights out in Austin. I have to say it is horrible timing if this is the case. He's literally the main mascot of the whole Austin GP. Who else will ride into the paddock on a horse, wearing the American flag, a cowboy hat, and a handlebar mustache? Oh, no. Either way, it does seem like this might be it for Danny Ric. And in tribute to him, I wanted to give a bit of a perspective on how he got here, how he fared on the grid, and why he never quite lived up to his true F1 potential. And I am missing my fucking voice, so fuck you for noticing. How he got to F1 was quite ordinary, if I'm honest, but he did put in the work where it mattered. So British of me. Specifically, in 2009, he was part of a bunch of young guys giving the new RB a test drive over a 3-day testing sprint. And in pure Danny fashion, he put in the fastest lap of all on the final day, a gap of a full fucking second to the guy that came behind him. And I've never heard of the dude's name that came after Danny, so all I can say is the young Aussie did good. He did good. But even with his debut in the sport, it wasn't all butterflies and daisies for him, as the first stint of his F1 career with HRT and Toro Rosso was pretty ass. He ended up getting points with the Lacho, but still pretty shit if you ask me. But nevertheless, Christian clearly saw something in the Australian before any on-track performance. And he's got a pretty good eye for that, I have to say. Do I need to make another reference to his wife being a pop star, or is my point clear enough? The jump to Red Bull from Danny was fantastic, and really a dream come true, wasn't it? Scoring wins left and right, partnering alongside a 4-time world champion, it was straight out of a fairy tale. What's more so is that Danny even finished ahead of Vettel in the Drivers' Championship, taking 3rd behind the 2 total-powered blokes at the front. But to be honest, that was all she wrote for a while, as the Red Bull became crap thanks to the infamous piece of shit that was the Renault engine. Foreshadowing. And it was like this up until 2016, until the tables really turned, and a young prospect suddenly was promoted to partner Danny. And that was none other than Max Verstappen. The appearance of Max at Red Bull was as legendary as Clarkson smacking a Top Gear producer. It was f***ing biblical, mate. And the next few years in Red Bull, the team had probably the most exciting roster in F1 history. Throughout the next few seasons, the two were going back and forth at each other, with no clear number one at the team. Not to me, at least. On one hand, there was a fairly experienced, talented and solid Australian really pushing the team forward, and on the other, an absolute menace of a teenager clearly lacking some experience, but making up for it tenfold with pure talent. It all kind of culminated in 2018, if I'm honest, with the legendary crash between the two talents in Baku, taking them both out of the race and getting a good old-fashioned spanking from the Big Daddy himself, getting the two kids to give a public apology to each and every engineer back in the RB factory. And all of that and more had led to probably one of the most legendary announcements in F1 history. An absolute shocker from Daniel Ricciardo, announcing the sudden departure from the team. Nobody saw that coming.
Actually, at the time, I knew all the strategy that was going on in the paddock, and I was actually predicting that this was going to happen at the time. I knew it. I knew that Ricciardo didn't have space at the Red Bull.
Oh, shut the up, bitch. Of course, nobody will ever know why Danny decided to do what he did. It was an absolute shocker for the whole F1 community. Daniel stepping out of the Red Bull, a clear top team at the time, and stepping into a garbage can on wheels. It was difficult to perceive the move as anything but a decision to go for some short-term dough over a long-term performance, and the media certainly painted it that way for the longest time, man. Certainly weighing on young Danny's shoulders. I like to view it in a different light, with Danny feeling that he was getting squeezed at the RB by the undoubtedly talented young boy, and was convincingly deceived by the Renault team that together they could build an unstoppable car. I'm not sure what they did to convince Daniel that Renault could build a reasonable race car. I'm not sure if there was ever a time the French could make a solid road car, let alone a fast one. Nevertheless, Cyril the Magician put a spell on Danny and was able to convince the Australian to join forces for next year. And what ensued was a slow, painful, and depressing downfall of our favourite guy from Leave It to Beaver. I'm not even sure I want to detail this too much because it was such a sad and gloomy fall for Danny boy. And you know exactly how this went, but I'll be quick. So first 2 years at Renault, a grand total of 2 podiums, a 9th and 5th in the championship, which led Daniel to not only regret his choice because of the shit performance on track, but also because by default he switched from a DB9 to a Megane. Yeah, and so that clear conundrum had led him to choose his next victim based on the personal car they could offer. And if Ferrari was too full at the time, McLaren was the next best option. And that went a bit better than expected, to be honest, especially initially. The combo of Lando and Daniel was fairly fun to follow, but still nothing even close to the legendary Car-Lando bromance we were privy to the year before. And he managed to somehow get a win under his belt in 21 in Italy, with Lando securing the 1-2 from McLaren. But unfortunately, that was all she wrote, as the McLaren started sucking major back from then on, and crucially, Daniel Ricciardo falling short of Lando on most of the racetracks. An all too familiar dynamic for Danny, with yet another talented and prospective young teammate giving it all. Although, the difference between 22 and 18 is that by then, Daniel was not in the prime of his career, and had already seen a good part of his days in F1 behind him. And that led to the McLaren not waiting too long before taking out the hammer and kicking the Aussie out of the team, leaving him without a seat in the sport for the first time. He of course then managed to scavenge a seat for the next 2 seasons at the RB, but the dynamic was never the same, leading us to present day, and an imminent end to a very promising career looming over the horizon. Damn, this is actually sad, mate. So here we are, mate. I have to say, a roller coaster of a ride. But I still feel like I have this pit in my stomach. It's just not finished yet. There was just so much promise in the early years at Red Bull. So much so that I think if you asked anyone in 2018 if Daniel would be a world champion, everyone would say yes. It would just be a matter of time. To me, I think he just couldn't cope with the prospect of becoming a number 2 at Red Bull. Whether it had to do with his early success at the team, outcompeting the 4-time champion on his debut year in the RB, or maybe Cyril was a wizard and whispered to his ear that he could be so much more if he joined the Renault outfit. I don't know. But it certainly forced him into taking a very risky, and some would say an irrational move at the time. Well, that is of course me sitting here yapping with 2020 hindsight. Who could have known that when he signed that new contract with the French team, that he may very well had signed away his prospects at the title and a bright future in the sport? Well, either way, it's been a hell of a ride, and we'll always remember that bright smile of his, bringing up the overall mood of the paddock by at least a few more degrees every time the camera was turned to him. So I'd like to say good luck, Danny. I'm sure you'll do great at whatever you choose to do next. I'm pretty much mourning him at this point. What the fuck? Feels like he died or something. Jesus. He's fit, well, and alive, by the way, if you were wondering.